Okay, and hopefully our audio issues are working now. Those of you that are following along in the YouTube chat, give me a yes or no on the audio. And of course we're going to have to wait a few seconds because of the delay between us and the YouTube chat.
Yeah.
Yep. Thumbs up on the audio. Awesome. So,
Okay.
this is the problem with these, especially these Zoom chats. It's always an issue with audio. Sometimes it's an issue with video, but audio especially. It's either an issue.
What was the problem?
I don't know. They were getting a weird echo. I went back and monitored the stream for a few seconds, and there was this weird echoing effect. And I don't know, because it wasn't anything picking up on my mic because I wasn't using my speakers. Obviously, I was using headphones, so it was strange. But I mean, the only thing I could do was restart Pulse Audio. You know, I just logged out and logged back in. So. But even before that, I mean, before we started the stream, I was having issues with Vasant's audio because he had the wrong mic output. You know, we always spend a few minutes fixing audio issues. Well, not always. Sometimes we just all get it right, but most of the time there's usually a few little bugs here and there.
You know, this was a fresh operating system, so I just for a minute I was confused.
Yeah, but it's a little different for me too. I'm using a little different setup recently, switching over to i3 here.
Yeah.
All right, so now that everybody can hear us, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello. All right. Yeah, we got you. I think everybody's audio is good now. I'm gonna have two different free and open chat Sundays later. I'm gonna have that 2 or 3 minutes we recorded earlier with me echoing really badly and you guys not being heard at all. So I'm going to have to go back and delete that one later.
Yeah, I tried to join the first one and it didn't work.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, it was strange because the first couple of people that joined, I couldn't hear them. And then when we got their audio problems working, my audio problems, I guess, started. It's Pulse Audio. Maybe one day
Today is a bad day for Pulse Audio.
Yeah. One day I'll switch over to Jack. I did a couple of streams using the Jack server on Fedora and it worked fine. Maybe I should try to put that here on my Manjaro install. Oh well.
I just tinkered with the Jack just a few hours ago, I guess, in the morning, and it actually screwed up my entire system audio, and I couldn't hear anything. Nothing was working. I don't know what I did. This is my first time actually working with Jack.
Yeah. I've only played with it a little bit. It can be kind of confusing to set up. And then if you've got a lot of different audio inputs and audio outputs, you know, things get confusing. Like I'll finally get my mic working in Jack and I can record something in OBS, but then I can open up YouTube and try to play a video. I've got no sound in that. And, you know, it's just like you get some things working and then you break other things with it.
I was like reading an article in the internet about how to connect Jack and Pulse Audio together so that nothing breaks, but for my recordings, I could use Jack for having a live audio feedback to my headphones. But what happened is I broke the entire system. The operating system. I was running the Deepin edition of Manjaro, and then, you know, I got to reinstall the KDE edition and then roll back.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there still a lot of problems with Deepin, or have they started fixing those with the...
Yeah, the original Deepin actually is still having a lot of problems. The Manjaro Deepin is actually much better than the actual Deepin operating system. You know, it doesn't have the Deepin store. It doesn't have many applications that cause problems in the original Deepin operating system, which is based off of Debian.
Okay. It's a fork off of that then, or?
Yeah, they use the Deepin desktop environment on top. They use the Manjaro on top of Deepin desktop environment.
Yeah. Yeah, Manjaro does a pretty nice Deepin. Antergos does a pretty nice deepen.
I'm a fan of deepen, but deepen always disappoints me.
Yeah. But honestly, if I was gonna, if I like the deepen desktop environment, I'd probably just run the deepen OS. I mean, it works. I know a lot of people have a problem with it because it's Chinese. It might be spyware and all that. I don't buy into all of that. A lot of people have a problem with Rosa, that Russian distribution, the KDE distribution Rosa, because it's Russian, so it must be something malicious in it too. But it's all open source, you know. So
yeah. It was open source, but the point is it takes time until somebody gets to that point of code, somebody reads it, who is not from that organization, and points that this software is a malware or is going to steal your privacy, right? Until then, we don't know whether what's happening or what's not happening.
Yeah, but every distro could be doing that. Do you just assume that they're all up to no good? You got to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. So.
And even you have to assume that they actually compile the source code they actually put on GitHub or GitLab or whatever they do. You have to assume that they actually do compile that code, or they have separate code base with their spy tools inside.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat, Stacy, mentions the stream is buffering. It all looks good on my end. I got a green in YouTube, a green in OBS. So if you're having a problem with the stream, refresh your browser, and you'll probably be back watching in 1080p here in just a second.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I don't know why sometimes YouTube, I watch other people's live streams sometimes. You'll be watching somebody in 1080p, and then it'll drop down to 144p for no reason. Yeah. And you can't get back to 1080p until you refresh. So
that's because something about servers.
Yes. So it's nothing that I can control. That's on YouTube's part.
Yeah, that's how servers are reached and stuff like that. It's servers.
Yeah, right. But my network connection and all is good right now, so.
It's actually, the Google Chrome uses a proprietary codec to serve the YouTube video so that it gets faster when playing back. But what happens is many of the people, when using Firefox, they don't have that exact version of proprietary codec, and it's just going to fail. So it's going to drop back to a WebM or some open source version. I mean, some open source codec, and it's going to be laggy and slow, and it's going to automatically shift back to an older codec. In Google Chrome, I don't have any problems. Sometimes I use Firefox, and YouTube actually doesn't render at all in Firefox.
For me, I had more problems, always had more problems with Google Chrome when it comes to YouTube. Firefox works really well. Basically, what is with this, the drop quality is something a bit, it's because of how servers are set up, basically the edge servers, the outside servers which actually serve content are set up, and because sometimes some edge servers don't receive the data fast enough, browser or the video player actually switches to another edge server, and because that one is farther away, it automatically drops the amount of pixels you need to receive, amount of data needs to receive, so you receive at the same time. That's what it is. It didn't have anything to do with codecs most of the time.
I will tell you one thing Firefox doesn't do well with YouTube is the YouTube chat doesn't function all that well.
Yeah, that's probably because it actually was made for Chrome WebKit engine, but that's because that's for what it was optimized.
Yeah. So like when I do these live streams, especially like the solo live streams where I'm just doing a FAQ with the YouTube chat, and there's a couple hundred people in the YouTube chat, and the chat will just freeze and it'll hang for several seconds, and then all of a sudden I'll get like 100 questions up, and you lose track of the chat. Instead of it just going smooth, it's like every couple of minutes it just hangs.
Yeah,
as far as I know,
optimization.
As far as I know, that problem is because of the JavaScript engine that Firefox runs.
Yeah. Well,
its problem is because most people don't know, even those who write some recreational websites, that every browser has different engines for everything. And basically, even the best websites have three different versions of code. One for Firefox, one for Chrome, and one for Edge or IE at the time. And the best websites have three different code bases, and all three are at the same time served depending on the engine used. And probably the chat was made specifically to be the best working on Chrome or in Chromium based engines, the WebKit engine, and
the Blink engine.
It's a problem with all that non-free JavaScript they use. If they were using free JavaScript,
it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah,
because the engine, even if it is open source, even if it is that, it won't matter because that's how the engine is compiled. That's how engine works. Even if it's open source JavaScript, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Just quickly, thanks for the super chat, Breadmoth in the chat. He says, "How is that systemd working out for those who swear by it?" By the way, Slackware Linux Master 8. Yeah, Slackware is great. Systemd, I don't know. I use whatever init system is on the distro I happen to be running. I don't mind.
He's probably referencing the bugs that were found. 3 bugs that were found in.
But bugs are.
Two of them were already fixed by.
Exactly.
Red Hat, and one of them is in the pipeline. So,
I mean,
scared of, and
you can find bugs in any code.
Are Linux people hating kernel developers or Linux kernel whenever they find a huge exploit in kernel? Basically, systemd is a lot less important than kernel. Kernel is basically system.
When we get an exploit in the kernel,
basically. You're unsecure to the maximum.
We get an exploit in the kernel and it's fixed within a day or two, and people are like, you see, this is the great thing about open source, but when systemd does the same thing, you see, this is the problem with systemd. Well, there's a double standard here. You can't,
One of the problems with people have with systemd is also that it is maintained by Red Hat, basically maintained by a corporation. And
we're anti-corporate. That's the Linux community. They hate big corporations. So.
Isn't it also the attitude? I think, especially early on, some of the systemd guys had, particularly Pottering.
A lot of people did not like Lennart Pottering. They didn't like his attitude when he developed Pulse Audio, and people had issues with that. He developed systemd. People had issues with that, and then he fed into that sometimes with how he responded to criticism. People.
But reality, that is past.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, a code developer with social issues. That's unusual.
That's a new thing. That's a new thing.
Been like that a long time. Believe me, I've been coding stuff for a long time, and when I worked for General Electric for a couple years, they had some real characters.
Yeah. If you go into every shop where they do, you can't miss a guy with social issues.
What gets me is so Pulse Audio. I complain about Pulse Audio all the time, but it's kind of the best thing we have, right? But there are still people that are so anti-Pulse Audio that they install a distro that has it. They try to strip out all the Pulse Audio or, try to run one of these obscure distros that just doesn't ship with Pulse Audio. And I don't get that, because just also by itself wasn't great. I mean, it's
not complete.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is it changes your defaults and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
Other than that, it works well as long as you keep on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right about, like sometimes, like I'll get an update for Pulse Audio and it wrecks my configs,
Yep. Yeah, and then you just got to go back in and select it all again, and it'll work.
Yeah. But, it's the best thing. We got people that complain about it. Okay, well, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Unless we have an alternative, with systemd, there's alternatives, but are they any better? Are they any worse? Give me systemd or OpenRC or Run It or Upstart, sysvia init. Give me any of them. I mean, does the distro boot? Okay. So.
So, Derek, this week I tried Peppermint.
Mm-hmm.
And after watching the rerun of the Big Daddy Linux from last Saturday, seemed pretty nice. What do you think of it?
Peppermint's nice. It is one of the nicer of those more minimal distros because their desktop environment, that hybrid desktop environment they've got going with really kind of LXDE, but it's got a lot of XFCE to it. It's kind of weird that they get that to work because a lot of these kind of mishmash desktop environments, these hybrid desktop environments, because I've seen a lot of other people try to take different parts of different desktop environments, and it never works. But the Peppermint guys, they make it work. All their extra utilities, also just the polish of it out of the box. A lot of these minimal distros, they don't ship with nice themes or any kind of wallpaper packs. I think the last time I looked at Peppermint, it wasn't this recent version, but the one before. Don't they have like 50 or 100 wallpapers installed on that thing, like out of the box? Just everything about it is much more polished than what you expect for a quote minimal kind of distro, right?
Yeah, with all the web apps and stuff, I assume it's sort of the Linux community's answer to a Chromebook or something.
It kind of
Would that
is.
be accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they want to be noted for that necessarily.
No,
but
right.
But certainly a younger generation that is used to those kinds of web apps probably appreciate that. People like us probably, I don't fool with that stuff. But
yeah, I've got my 13-year-old son on Peppermint, and he seems to like it, so it's well suited.
Yeah, and it just works. I mean, I put it on a couple of real machines, and I've never had an issue with it. Of course, Zeb pushes Peppermint heavily. Of course, English Bob, he does all those trucking live streams on Peppermint. And, he actually, occasionally he does some gaming on other distros. I know he played with Arco recently. I think he's done, I remember Calculate Linux, EB. And, Peppermint, he tends to get better performance on Peppermint, according to, what English Bob says. So for those of you that game, it might be a option.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, yes. You're good, Big Bob.
Yes.
Yeah.
Had a bit of network problems.
Yeah, it happens to all of us.
I have a bit of a caffeine problem and the fact that I'm lacking some right now.
Remember 2 weeks ago I talked about my keyboard troubles?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I followed the chat's advice, which is probably not a good advice to ever follow in general, but I got the K360 keyboard. That's the from Logitech.
Logitech.
And it's pretty okay. I mean, it's a chiclet keyboard, so you'll have the pros and cons of that style keyboard. But for what it is, it's pretty good. I was surprised. Like it's, as I said, it's wireless. It uses what they call the Logitech's unifying connector.
Yep.
And basically, I was surprised that it worked with Linux right out of box. Like I just plugged it in. And I think it reminded me, sometimes we harp back to that there's no marketing behind Linux. Like I think if you look at the box, it says it works on Windows, I think Mac OS, maybe Chromebook, but it says nothing about Linux. I think the mouse that I got with it is that I got separately. Says it's compatible with the Linux kernel 2.6.
Yeah, like one of these little guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And generally with hardware it's a plug and play device, like your mouse and keyboard, as long as USB, it's just going to plug in and it's going to work. It's the stuff that requires drivers that's going to be a problem. So if you have like some weird gaming mouse with a bunch of lights,
and even then, mouse will work. Just the
extra functions won't. Like the extra buttons.
It's separate software.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Most of the time, if you set it up in Windows, lights stay as they were in Linux.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
What I find interesting is that on all my Fedora installations, that the FN keypad, like on the, I have several different types of these wireless keypads, and they all have these, type of FN things for the secondary functions. All of them work. I can, it's like volume up, volume down, scroll lock, all that stuff seems to work fine out of the box.
Yeah,
that's mainly depending on the desktop environment, but most of the time it works.
For keyboards, I've a lot of the extra buttons, like the media keys and stuff like that, typically work. It's when you get those weird keyboards that have keys you've never seen before. Sometimes those don't work, but all the standard,
that type of thing,
Yeah.
One of the weird things is that, at least on the keyboard I got, some of the special functions, they're actually key bound to specific key combinations that you use on the Windows desktop. So, for example, F function plus F5 brings up the task switcher in Windows, but which is kind of weird because the key combination is less convenient than just pressing the Windows key and tab. It's completely redundant.
Some are good, some are bad in those cases.
And the one thing you always have to take into account when you buy these keyboards, they've always got that Windows key. You need to go ahead and buy the Linux sticker so you can peel off the Windows sticker and put the Linux logo on your window.
It's very crucial.
Yeah. I actually kind of miss the secondary Windows key on the left. Like a lot of manufacturers, they just leave that off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm using a window manager where that's the key press to access all the functions, that kind of limits me, because I think for normal Windows users, like all it is basically, it's the button you press to pull up the start menu, and that's it. Even though there are a bunch of different really interesting key bindings to control it, I think nobody actually
will lock you out and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and I've gotten a couple of questions on my videos. I always mention like the super key. I never call it the Windows key. I call it the super key. And people will ask, what the hell is the super key you keep talking about? There's no key on my keyboard called the super key. Well, that's, when I first started, those of us old enough to remember old keyboards, there was actually a super key on it. And it was kind of in the place where that Windows key is now. But, then you got Apple, who changed the key to their command key, and, Windows PCs have the Windows key. But there used to be, there used to be a super key there. There was a hyper key. There was a meta key, There were
it's like the Ctrl versus Control issue.
Yeah.
On old keyboards, you will see Control, and the new ones you see Ctrl. And I believe on Macs, you still see Control. And people are so confused when you say Control instead of Ctrl.
Yeah.
But yesterday's video.
Go ahead.
But yesterday's video that DistroTube made about the noob questions was so hilarious.
Yeah, and I bet those are real questions too. Like, that's amazing what some people will ask, and it just makes you shake your head sometimes.
Yeah, as the video progressed, I was almost ready to fall out of my chair because of laughter.
Mm-hmm.
It was so good.
I'm not Luke Smith.
And that was That was a real thing too. I actually had somebody message me about a video that I didn't make, and I could tell this guy thinks I'm some other YouTuber. And I was like, dude, or do we all look alike? I mean,
he takes off his mustache for Thursday to do news.
Yeah.
Well, I remember helping an older couple, both ham operators like myself, and they had a new antenna set up, and they were, how should we match this and do this other kind of connection stuff? And I just sat down at their computer, and one Google search, I had maybe 3 or 4 options they could pursue, complete with pictures, but it never occurred to them to actually get on a search engine and look for answers. I was just sort of flabbergasted.
Yeah, that's an older generation thing, mainly.
It's really amazing, the fact that I still find I'm an IT professional. I understand how networking goes. That's what my college degree's in, and everything else. It just amazes me that I can type an arbitrary search into Google, and within microseconds, I have relevant results back on my screen. And, I'm figuring, okay, that's going all the way out to California, going through those servers and coming all the way back with the information. And it's just...
It's probably not going all the way to California. It's probably going to closest edge server.
Yeah.
Still, it's going outside the building.
Yeah, but speed of the current internet is so fast that those microseconds are actually slow.
Yeah, it just blows my mind. It really does.
And one thing, I've talked about the Linux community. We can be kind of harsh to new users, but at the same time, new users, you've got to come at this with a different kind of mindset. Like I got a question 2 or 3 days ago. Hey, DT, how do I get started with Qtile? And I was like, install it. I mean, so what are you sudo apt install Qtile? I'm assuming he's on a Debian-based distro. I was like, what do you want from me? I was like, and I have my configs on GitLab. Pull, if you don't know how to config the thing, it's like.
Well, having just tried Qtile this week, I can kind of relate to that person a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I haven't used other tiling window managers, but the Fedora install. When you bring it up for the first time, it's using the default configuration, but it says config error in the lower left corner because you don't have a local configuration file installed. It doesn't say that at all. Mm-hmm. And it took me, I don't know, a day or two to kind of figure out that I was searching the internet to see if there was a problem with the Fedora package, blah, blah, blah. Finally, I realized if I just also, I could not find where the default config file was.
I had that
on
same
the Fedora
problem
as well. So I had to go out to GitHub, find one, put it in. Then it started working. That one was particularly unintuitive, shall I say.
I've used Qtile on and off for years, and when I did my obscure window manager video about Qtile, and I started from the basic Qtile, I think I had a problem finding the default config. I had to do a locate Qtile, and it spat out all the files and directories that had Qtile in the name, and I had to search for that config file, then copy it over to the home directory.
I couldn't even find it with find. It was it was bizarre.
Yeah, I end up using locate as well. And honestly, their documentation is kind of wanting in this area. But I ran into a really interesting thing with Qtile this week myself. I had it running on Fedora inside of VM on my MacBook. And then when I tried to get it going on a piece of hardware, that installation was using Wayland. And what I ended up finding out is that the Xorg installation on this machine is hosed somehow. And of course, Qtile requires Xorg. It will not work in Wayland as of this moment. It's something that's not well known either.
Well, a lot of window managers are, they're going to require Xorg.
Yeah.
Some of them, I'm not even sure if they've planned for the future. I mean, things like Xmonad, for example, the fact that X is in the name should give you a clue that they have no plans for Wayland. They haven't even thought that far. So, some of these window managers.
Qtile claims that it's in their roadmap, but they're not there yet.
Yeah.
Well, the question is, I mean, Fedora being bleeding edge, they they put GNOME 3 as the default for the defaults to using Wayland. They're about the only distro that seems to do that. Even the KDE, the Cinnamon desktop environments of Fedora are still using X.
XFCE as well.
Yeah, and so and then the like Mint and Ubuntu and everybody else seems to be sticking with X and letting Fedora kind of cut the path on it.
Yeah,
I don't see it improving much.
No. Well, I know Ubuntu had put Wayland on like the interim releases, but for the LTS, you notice they went back to Xorg, because that has to be stable. So,
Another thing, Derek, you're a fan of Xmonad, is that correct?
Yeah, I like it. You get along with Qtile Xmonad functions very similarly. That's why I kind of can relate to both of them.
I went to install Xmonad, and there was almost over 900 meg of stuff because the entire Haskell development system had to be brought in. It kept me from putting it in because my disk space is a little bit limited.
And that is the one complaint people, well, there's two complaints about Xmonad. The one complaint people have is it's bloated because you have to have Haskell on your system. You have to have the Haskell compiler. These things are large, it brings in a lot of stuff. The other complaint is you have to know Haskell. But other than that, it's a fantastic window manager.
It's the functional language these days, but
yeah.
And another super chat,
Lisp, but that's only from ignorance.
Yeah, Bredmoth has another super chat. He's asking a question: if somehow ZFS proper got ported to Linux, ignore licensing legalities, wouldn't that negate the need for ButterFS or make it redundant? Yes, if we had ZFS, we wouldn't even bother with ButterFS because ButterFS still really isn't rock solid stable yet either. So
who uses ButterFS?
Fedora and OpenSUSE. Fedora and OpenSUSE
uses ButterFS by default.
Fedora uses XFS by default, but OpenSUSE uses the ButterFS by default.
Oh yeah, no, I will deliberately change that to EXT4.
Now they're working. Now we have ZFS on Linux.
I use EXT2, which doesn't need the journaling.
So the licensing issues he's talking about is because originally they used a license that is not compatible with the GPL. So most Linux distributions are not going to put ZFS on it. So, but there's some work being done around that to have what we call ZFS on Linux, which will be something that will be GPL, so it will be compatible. So Canonical and Red Hat and all these companies will be free to actually use ZFS. Where right now they're kind of hesitant because of legal reasons.
Personally, to me, that's kind of moronic.
Don't hold back.
RiserFS died when the developer murdered his wife and went to prison. So that project, when the main dev went to jail 10 years ago, and then nobody wanted to use it because being associated with that guy. So a lot of distributions didn't even want to be associated with the name RiserFS. So RiserFS, it's dead.
Which is funny because my LPIC 1 still mentions Riser as a operating or as a file system. Doesn't really teach anything about it. It just says it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, RiserFS was a neat project. It had a lot of killer features, but
Yeah, someone would get sound of crickets going or something.
But yes, what do you guys think? If ZFS was available on every Linux distro, would we even bother with ButterFS? Would we even talk about ButterFS anymore? Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't
Mine wouldn't
yeah.
change. I only use EXT.
Yeah.
Probably we'll still bother with ButterFS because ButterFS is more targeted at a single user than ZFS, which is more targeted at server usage. And I use it on a server environment on my file server. It's really good for that, but for a single drive, normal user isn't that. It is
using ZFS on
it
Linux.
is not normal. Yeah, ZFS on Linux.
Okay.
It is usable, but I still think more or less it's server environment file system.
Yeah, I don't really shines on.
ZFS have over extend for.
Well, it really shines on multiple drives.
Yeah, that's the part that actually why it's so good to servers, because it had its Z-RAID feature, which is software type RAID that can, in some cases, control also work with RAID controllers, and it's really good for that. But otherwise, it's just a standard file system, and doesn't bring anything, any plus to desktop user.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, well, when I get my servers running, then I'll look into it, I guess.
In my opinion, it could probably stay on server side for most people.
Yeah, the other problem with stuff like this is that the longer it takes for ZFS to become available, ButterFS becomes more prevalent out there for those that are using it. It'll be hard to switch away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, also that.
Fragmentation.
Yep.
It's
where we live, right?
It's one of the beauties of the open source community. And people always talk about, we have too many desktop environments or file systems or init systems. No, we don't.
As you pointed out, that has good and bad aspects to it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. The innovation,
yeah.
The innovation in the Linux community is what keeps me here.
Yeah. You can't give people the freedom to fork these things and change them and modify them and then complain when they do that. You know, that's
right.
Hypocritical.
Right.
So, yeah. So.
I just remember back in the old BBS, the dial-up BBS days, and there was a BBS called World War IV that was a open source, and you could modify that all you wanted with the understanding that you might break something, and the developer was not responsible for what you broke. So when they put out a new kernel of that not operating system of the BBS, if you had modified something heavily, you were expected to be able to figure out what you did and fix it when it broke the new version. And it seemed to work pretty good for I don't know, maybe about 10 years, and then all of a sudden the internet kind of took off and killed dial-up BBSs. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no one really plays with BBS anymore. Yeah.
Problem with dial-up in it's really slow and fills up one line on the network. So
yeah, well, no, this was way back before high-speed access and stuff like that.
I know,
this is one of the fastest connect speed that you could get was maybe 56K if you had a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
But I missed the sound the modem made when you hooked up.
Yeah.
I
mean, most people don't realize what a gigantic advance in technology it was when we went from 14.4 modems to 28.8. Like, we got twice the speed. You know, like, and now looking back, it's like,
right. I would fool the modem thinking that it was connecting at 1200, just whistling, but I'm so out of practice.
It's like, when I was a teenager, and I was, make web pages, anybody that made web pages back in the 80s and 90s, you did not put graphics on these web pages. You didn't put images at all if you could get away with it, because on those low internet speeds, you would sit there and you would wait for the image to slowly load one line at a time. And we're so spoiled with all these multimedia websites now. You could never do that, back in the early days of the internet.
No.
Yeah.
No, it was all text-based.
Yeah.
I was thrilled when 2400 baud came out.
Oh, yeah. I used to connect up to the backs at 2400. I bought a VT100 and had a modem, had a dedicated phone line, or I had two phone lines going into my apartment at the time, and connect to the school's VAX, and used to do my homework, my programming homework on that and stuff like that. Teacher was always impressed because I was always compensating for the slow modem speeds, and it's like, how are you able to test that out? It's because I'm using it at home, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I miss the old internet too. Before big companies basically have taken over the internet.
Yeah.
It's like 90% of the internet is owned by Google and Facebook and Microsoft.
I don't.
Yeah. In the early days, nobody really ran the internet. Nobody had control.
Yeah.
No.
Actually, my dad gave me this. I don't know whether this was a modem or not, but let me show you this to the camera. Yeah. This one. Okay. I think it's rotated. This is a Net Cruiser, and this looks like a modem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
You got the phone line and the serial connect.
Yeah, my dad just gave me, and I just put this in my collection.
Yeah.
Collection of tech that is old and it's not working.
Yeah, you don't need that anymore.
Yeah, you're probably not going to get it to
full
work.
of such tech.
Well, it may be working, but how are you going to tell? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It is not working, because I remember when I was 4 or 5, I just took this apart and then I did whatever. I don't know. I don't remember. I just stripped all of the LEDs on this. I just did some tinkering with it. And I never saw this actually working. Before I was born, my dad said that it was working. He used to use it. But after I was born, there was no internet until 2006. We didn't have a connection. And in 2006 or something, we had wired.
Yeah. So you basically broke up.
Yeah, I broke up, and I only have this now. Just for a memory that some time ago I had this.
Derek, I have a question about search engines.
Okay.
Well, for the group, I guess, or whatever, but recently I've been using DuckDuckGo a little bit more because I've been using W3M. Mm-hmm. And if you use DuckDuckGo as the search page, it's a lot cleaner than Google search. No images, et cetera, but the results seem to be somewhat different. Do you see much in the way of difference between what you dredge up with Google versus DuckDuckGo, or is it?
Yeah, there can be some differences. Yeah, I've noticed.
Yeah, I have been using Google and DuckDuckGo simultaneously for I think 6 months or so, and I have also been using another search engine called Quant. And there seems to be a significant difference between Google and DuckDuckGo search results.
And different in what way?
Different in the way that Google kind of filters some stuff, some non-illegal stuff, and DuckDuckGo doesn't do that. I mean, the result ranking in DuckDuckGo is kind of more organic than in Google.
So Google has like some options, some filters, you can tick on and off, where DuckDuckGo may be using a different set of defaults than Google. So that may
and Google uses a lot of data they already have to filter stuff out that people normally don't want.
But you can get different.
Google has
you can get different Google results though. I mean, if all of us did a search on Google right now for a particular key phrase, don't be surprised if all of us get different search results. It'll vary.
Yeah, I think they use geolocation, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. By the IP address.
Either geolocation, or they also use the way you access the site, because in many countries they have domains reserved. So, for example, my domain I use is google.se.
They're keeping track of everything you search for and what you buy on Amazon and customizing the results based on that.
Also that.
Yeah, what I have seen is they use something called a user agent that talks about what browser you're using, what operating system that we are using, what version, and including what kind of JavaScript that we have. And they actually change a lot of the search results based on that.
Yeah,
that's true.
They also leave cookies in the browser that are going to get activated when we visit websites like Facebook, Wikipedia, or a lot of websites, basically. And they track our activity on a lot of different websites to know what we are doing on that particular website. They're going to get that data through cookies in the browser and then switch back to Google.
Well,
when you visit Google, they're going to update that and then show relevant results according to that.
They're collecting information from us.
So for somebody that's done a little internet marketing in the past, what Google does, Google is basically just an ad network. So they take all this user agent information to better serve you ads, right? So depending on your location, for example, a lot of AdSense and AdWord guys on that are using Google, they only want to serve ads to maybe American customers, right? So if Vasanth is connecting from India, we're not going to show those ads to him because it's pointless. So we're going to show him a different set of ads than what they might show, me. So it's all about, so they're taking everything, your operating system and screen resolution, everything about you to better serve you.
They take everything in account.
Yeah.
So everybody except me is American, right?
No,
I'm Canadian.
No,
Slovenia, Europe.
Oh, that's great. Meeting so many people from different locations,
Can I ask a question? Like you said you did a bit of web app marketing.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, how effective is it, do you think, compared to other forms of marketing?
It's a tough gig. As far as you're talking about internet marketing as opposed to what like print advertising marketing. It's a tough gig, and it's a lot of work. Like it's just an insane amount of work that goes into because you have to basically try to game the search engines, right? And you have to know every stuff. Like there's so much experimentation involved in it. Like it's just an unbelievable amount of work that people put into this. So much work, in fact, that most people that do it, basically, the people that make the big money, other than like the gigantic companies, of course, like Facebook and Google, and the people that run the game, but a lot of internet marketers that make a lot of money do it through black hat methods, right? They do it through scandalous means. So you're talking about bots and things like that, or even spiders, yeah. So you're trying to basically cheat at the game, really. It's hard to play fair and to make any money with it. So or try to maliciously put a cookie on somebody's system. Was a big one back in the day. Yeah.
I just asked because I've heard mixed things about the web ad market. Like I think it's dominated by Facebook and Google. I think they've driven ad rates down through the floor, I believe. It's something that I feel like people don't talk about much, even though it's literally the basis for almost all internet activity. So
it seemed like in the early days of the internet, it was not hard to make a few bucks with things like AdSense or when Facebook started their ads. It's good money, eBay ads. But as the internet kind of became more and more popular and more people are trying to make money with that, you had a lot more people doing scandalous things, trying to, again, game the system, which kind of ruined it for everybody. The ad revenues went way down because Google's not paying, what they used to pay for these ads, because most of these people are not doing the right things to get these ad views and these click-throughs. So they don't want to pay people for fraudulent clicks or, right. And to be fair, the people that are paying Google to run their ads don't want to pay for those things either. So in a lot of ways, the people that, and again, the black hat SEO guys, they kind of ruin it for everybody else. So
basically seeing on, especially on YouTube, seeing how the price of the ad is so low. Even the, what is it called, the YouTube time was called YouTube Red, now YouTube Premium, was more. It's better to have that YouTube Red guy watch than it was to a couple of guys on normal.
And I wasn't even mentioning the YouTube, AdSense on YouTube. But you're right. That the reason a lot of YouTube content creators complain about there's no money to be made at YouTube as far as the ads, which the ads are very low paying. Is because YouTube, which is owned by Google, they had to basically cut out some of that because, again, a lot of these videos were serving ads that had nothing to do with the content of the video, and the people paying Google for these ad placements, they got pissed, right? If I'm paying you to sell my car, I'm a car company, say I'm Ford or Mercedes or something, and you're running these ads on PewDiePie's channel, or Paul Logan's, suicide forest walks. I don't want to be a part of that. I paid you a lot of money for that ad, so now I'm pulling my ads from you, Google, and now Google is mad, so they're cracking down on the content creators.
Yeah.
And what is your opinions on the darknet?
They make good scary stories.
Basically, it's a story you can scare young hackers with or young computer guys with, but nothing else. It's in the old times. It's actually a couple, like 5-6 years ago. It's actually a good thing before it was really proliferated by media and stuff.
And it depends.
You could find good stuff on there.
Yeah. When you say the dark net, you have to clarify exactly what you're meaning. The dark net, when people throw that term around, really means the net that is not searched by or not crawled by search engines, right? It's the net that you can't find through Google, right? So
I mean dark web.
You're really
talking actual crazy stuff happens.
So you're talking about
dark web,
like Tails and the Tor browser and all those .onion sites.
The onion stuff.
That was what I was talking about. Somewhat on the older days, it's actually somewhat good. Some stuff good, even especially for us computer guys. There was like a lot of like chat rooms where you could talk about computers and hacking and stuff like that. But even a lot of white hat or gray hat stuff was around there because everybody was scared, so they wanted to hide. But after Silk Road and Silk Road got around to people, it started a lot changed on deep web and a lot dark web, and a lot of this hacker stuff went away because it was forgotten.
So the media portrays the dark web as being nothing but drug dealers, terrorists, child pornographers, and
identity thieves.
Yes. And And the people that are proponents of things like Tails and Tor, which I am, I love them. Say, well, you're just taking like the bad parts of it and exploiting it. It's like the news sites.
Yeah.
But Silk Road, that was a big story. Let's be honest. This guy was making hundreds of millions of dollars selling drugs on the internet. So, I mean, I understand why that story was such a big deal, and it drew a lot of attention to what went on the dark web. It seemed like everybody that goes there must be, we're all trying to score heroin or crack or something. No, I just want to chat anonymously. That's all I want to do. I want to send an anonymous email,
Yeah.
Yeah, for countries where the press and communication is not so free, it's a way for those folks to let the rest of the world know what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think there's a real benefit to some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So as you guys are using, as you guys are Americans and you use the American internet every day, do you think America is kind of free in? Do you think America is spying on you in such cases about the internet traffic and stuff? Because I have heard crazy stories about NSA spying on people and all that stuff. And here in India, I don't think that's pretty much
that's happening in every country.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're at. You're being spied on by everybody.
Yeah. What is American internet? That's
right.
One question.
Exactly.
I'd like to ask, because first of all, internet was made in Switzerland in CERN.
Well, that's the World Wide Web.
That's the World Wide Web. But internet was born from that, because internet is what is internet? This is just a bunch of routers connected together. Nothing more.
Well, I mean, it all started off with ARPANET.
Yeah, but that was way back and not even close to what internet is now.
Oh,
we should understand that.
But I mean, the at its base, it's still just a bunch of networks connected to each other, and I mean, but I mean, it's not a central thing. And that's what.
Well, back to the question here.
I had this argument with the guy the other day. He's saying, there's one company that everything goes into and comes out of, and it's like, no, that isn't exactly how it works, because you got routing, the routing protocols, open source, path first, and all that other stuff that keeps you from block. But if one particular part goes down, it finds another path around it. Yeah. Whereas I think what he was getting at was there's like 3 domain hubs that dole out the domain names, but they don't.
That's changed.
They don't dole out IP. It's you get your IP from your server, from your ISP. And that's all connected with everything else. I mean,
nothing we do on the internet is private. I mean, it's people spying on us. Unless you your own internet service provider? No. So
even that
right there, you're already
internet distributed things. So basically, all the times, your connection could go through my router if it's going to, let's say, some Slovenian site. Could go through my router or through the router of someone else I know, and that one could be listening. It's not that because even those who say that VPNs help, they help from your computer to where it is decrypted. Yeah, but
as far as
actual server, no.
The NSA, are they spying on those of us that are in the U.S.? Yes. Are they spying on you guys that are outside the U.S.? Yes.
Yes.
So are the Chinese government. They're spying on everybody. It doesn't matter. So is the Russian government.
So is British GCHQ. Everyone is.
Mm-hmm. It's basically everyone is watching. Everyone.
Right. Everyone is
People
spying.
Who looking up cat videos are not being by the NSA. I mean, if you put in a certain term more than once or twice or something like that, they'll probably flag it maybe for some special research. They're looking for specific things.
Many of them are looking for either for information with which they could catch terrorism, because that's what we talk about all the time. They use filters and stuff like that to catch terrorists, and most of the time it's that, because there is not really a lot that you could do with information that you gather from normal people. Maybe blackmail, but they won't battle in blackmail because there is no big plus from that.
Yeah, the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah,
you look at that, and
for someone like U.S. government or NSA, there even blackmailing some CEO of big companies nothing, because the money is still low.
Yeah.
There's a positive side to all of this, though. I used to be concerned as countries start to become more isolationist that, the term internet means integrated set of networks, right? So it could be the case that each country can come up with their own internet. But as long as the governments are able to use the internet as a tool to enable their security goals, then I think that works in our favor, that they will remain interconnected.
Not really. Look at North Korea, look at China.
Sure.
Those people don't have internet most of the time, and especially North Korea, they don't have internet.
Yeah.
And
if they do have internet, they can't view what we view on the internet. I mean, it's a very
North Korea
curated.
Actually, I believe read somewhere that only, I don't know how much, almost nothing is connected to internet.
Yeah.
And China, they have that great firewall of China thing.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think to some extent the Chinese thing is almost a non-issue because they use their own services. They don't use the services that we use, right? They don't use Facebook. They have their own things.
Well, but it's still I understand that. Impression.
Yes, you can't censor you can't censor things like Facebook and Twitter and then say, well, we have our own services. No, it's like I go to a library. You can't have this book, but there's some better books that are more No, I want to read what I want to read. You can't. Right.
That was a good example.
Yeah,
that was a good example.
I mean, I could probably get a copy of Catcher in the Rye and Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer and all those other stuff that some school districts are banning, and I could read those without worrying that someone is trying to pry into my privacy on that. And so what if they were? I mean, those are classic American literature that you can learn a lot from.
And we could have an entire show discussing censoring books in schools. I mean, is Huckleberry Finn, has it really been banned in schools? That's crazy.
Sure.
That's I'm assuming because of some racial aspects to it, because of the time period it was written in.
Yeah.
But then we should just ban everything. I mean, we have to ban the Bible, right? We have to ban the Quran because these things were written in time periods where things like slavery and oppression to women. Wow, it's insane the mentality some people have with these things.
Still a lot of church ladies out there.
Well, it's like we just going to erase all of history? At some point, you just have to realize that this is actually damaging.
Well, and this is also why said that you put something up on the internet, as soon as it's up there forever. Because even if you take it down, whatever source you use, Facebook or whatever, there's someone out there that has a copy of it. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of by design. The internet was meant to be, or to have this connection of internets and networks and stuff like that was so it would be resilient. It wouldn't be affected by if all of a sudden this one place got hit by a bomb, or this other place got knocked down because the router decided didn't want to play nice or what have you. And it by design it has this redundancy built in.
Yeah.
So
well, it'll be interesting.
And it's just not the web either. I mean, it's other protocols as well. Yeah.
Young folks today, so to speak, they just don't have the same sense of privacy as their parents or their grandparents
because they never grew up with any.
They put
out. You would think that
they put everything out there. You know, everything's out there. They share it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and have absolutely no idea of the potential, dangers of it.
Right.
That's one way of thinking. Other way, I see a lot of old people don't care about their privacy even more than young people. While not posting stuff, it's a clear generational thing. But like stuff like the bank cards and the store cards you have, like you get bonuses and stuff like that. They leave that information. They give that information to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like when they have to sign for something, they tell all the information without asking themselves.
So we're getting
who it will go.
Yeah, we're getting into Richard Stallman's crusade against credit cards and debit cards because he thinks everything should be anonymous payment. So
I don't think anonymous payment.
Cryptocurrency, yay!
Every payment should have some sort of who paid it, in my opinion, because but it shouldn't be controlled by private corporations. In my opinion, it would be a lot safer in some regards if it would be controlled by governments, because governments don't have that much stakes in us spending money and knowing for what is spent, because either way they will get the information because from taxes and stuff like that, for tax records and stuff like that. But otherwise governments don't have that much stake in, like for example MasterCard or a specific bank. They have a lot of stake in us spending money.
I actually think there's a thin line between living in a modern life and being what do you call that? I mean, not being private, like sharing information. Like there is a thin line where it becomes ridiculous if you share more stuff.
Yeah.
And most of the younger generation of, I guess, my age don't know what is the difference between living a modern life and having their social life and getting out of that. I mean, doing it ridiculously.
Yeah.
Well, I like privacy, but one thing is, how far do we take privacy? Like being able to pay for things anonymously. You should be able to do that for everything. Well, I don't know. Should I be able to go to the airport and buy a plane ticket anonymously? Some people would probably be in favor for that. A lot of people would probably say that's a bad idea, right? So you might want to know who's getting on these planes.
Yeah, there's a thin line.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
I am backing up. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah.
Something that I wanted to ask. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
No, I was just going to comment in small towns, small places, everybody knew everybody's business.
No.
And I think the world is just with the higher communication. The definition of a small living area gets larger and larger, and just everybody knows everyone else's business much more in a wider geographical area.
Yeah, it's on a global
probably
scale.
going to keep happening until the asteroid hits.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that I put my call sign out there, my amateur radio call sign, that puts my address at the very least in the public sphere, because anyone can look it up in the CC database.
Yeah, thanks for telling everyone, Chris.
Yeah.
It's well known.
No, not by everyone.
They could just duck go it, and yeah.
Dan should be unhappy now too.
No, I knew that. It's public record.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my address is in the phone book. Big deal.
Right.
What's a phone book?
That's another thing. Yeah,
I keep a landline for, security reasons.
Mm-hmm.
When power goes out, landline still works.
Well,
that's right.
If you have the old school landline, and even those won't work all the time. For example, for me, landline doesn't work anymore because it's a part of IP networking. We can't have anymore the old school landline because we have optic fiber. So we have the what's it called, IP phone and VoIP. I just ripped that cable out of the box and threw a phone away.
Yeah, our phone company tried to talk us into going on internet over, voice over internet kind of stuff. And I just, no, absolutely not. The power goes out, my router stops, and what am I going to do? Keep a giant bank of batteries, just
That's
so
why I have a phone.
Telephone? No way.
Phone. That's why I have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, if you got a landline, it'd be great if you could get one of those old school rotary phones so you could dial with the
If you don't have something that doesn't use a lot of energy, if it's powered by electricity, then it's not even going to work.
Yeah.
If it gets power from the landline, that's okay. But
ours get power from the landline.
So we have one of the old school ones.
No, he's got it.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has it.
I had one that was on buttons, so you could type in the number. Didn't have to turn that wheel around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's another aspect to all of this. Privacy is one aspect, but my wife and I mentor a couple of young people, and just observing how they interact with the world around them. The social media, through things like abbreviating everything, etc. These kids are not learning good social skills, and you can see that as they enter the workplace, they really struggle in getting things done in a corporate setting because of this. That's another aspect.
That's actually another aspect that's completely mentality wise. A lot of young people, myself included, have problems with authority.
Well, I think we all started there.
That
goes way back.
Young people, its problem is that it is schools are problem. They don't exert enough authority. Okay, for me, it is that I think that I'm smarter than everyone else. So I know why I have problems with authority, and I have to try to fix it, but it doesn't go well most of the time.
No, we don't discipline kids the way we used to. Like when I was in school, it was common to be beaten with a paddle. That was just normal. If you did like the slightest thing out of line, they were going to tear you up. They might call your parents ahead of time to let them know, hey, I'm about to beat your child. And you know what my parents would say? Go ahead. Tear that ass up.
Big attitude shit.
Right.
Vice principal's main job was paddling.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was back when we walked uphill both ways, right?
Yeah.
In the snow, barefoot.
Mm-hmm.
But
and now teachers aren't allowed to touch these kids, and most parents wouldn't give them permission to discipline those kids in that way, where it was normal, right? It was.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different attitude in the fact that I'm sending my kid to you to quote educate unquote, but yet when they try to educate, it's like, well, you can't teach my kid that,
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten pretty far from Linux, haven't we?
Yeah.
Last week it was AI. This week it's socialization skills. So
Yeah,
That was
something
just
we can
socialize
really
the
talk
AI.
about, socialization.
Yeah, but I mean, this is important, Andy, because these socially inept young kids these days, they're the future of Linux, right? They're the future.
There are two types of socially inept. They are young and they're us.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're using free and open source software to enable this group chat. Derek, thank you so much for putting this on.
Yeah.
You're improving all of our social skills.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Zoom is not free and open source software, but I hear where you're coming from. So, but there is no good free and open source software to do this. I mean, what are my alternatives? Hangouts? Nah. Skype? So there are some free alternatives out there, but they're not good.
Yep.
If I got to use a proprietary application, Zoom's the one to go with.
So do you think Linux attracts a certain kind of person? That's a very simplistic statement, but
yes, I think the people that it attracts that stay with it typically are the do-it-yourself crowd. They're the kind of people that they can fix their own problems. They're self-sufficient.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a different kind of mentality. Absolutely.
Computer inclined stuff like IT professionals and do-it-yourself crowd is mostly what is Linux community.
I just got into it because it was free.
Well, there's that, but I mean, there's people have an interest in what makes things work and want to know, the things under the hood.
Yeah,
so.
that computer inclined crowd. That those guys will, but otherwise, general public.
You don't have to be computer inclined. A lot of people start with Linux and they know nothing about computers, but as long as they've got the right kind of mindset, like if. And this goes everything in life. Like my car broke. I don't know anything about cars, but I'm going to research the problem. I'm going to try to fix it myself. If you're that kind of person, you're just fine in Linux, right?
If my car broke, I call the guy.
Yeah, I would too because I don't.
Yeah, and that's his problem, not mine.
Yeah.
Well, you have to choose what you want to work on.
Right. That was just an example. I wouldn't fix my own car either because I don't have that kind of time. But I'm the kind of person that typically does fix my own problems in life. I'm not, looking for somebody else to solve those problems. So.
Even if you didn't fix your own car, you'd want to know what it took to fix your car, and that helps make your decision on whether you want to work on it or not.
Yeah,
I know how car works. That's enough for me.
Right. Yep.
But I do think it's a completely different mentality to use Linux. So it is a different crowd. Absolutely.
It'd be interesting if somebody could look at the different major distros and come to some conclusions about the different kinds of people that use them. Why would somebody pick Fedora over Arch, for example, or vice versa? What's different about them that they might do that? I'm saying not initially, but after testing different ones out, I
suspect,
never thought I'd be a Fedora guy, but I get a warm and fuzzy feeling.
What I suspect you would find, though, is that the majority of Linux users stick with whatever distro they start with, because if things are just working, you're probably not even going to look at anything else. So,
well, then I'm talking about people that end up watching this.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the nerds. So
yeah,
right.
We most of the time end up.
We prefer geeks.
Something like Arch related or more advanced stuff like Manjaro, Arca, stuff like that. You will mostly find stuff like that in here.
Well, it depends because a lot of you guys, do a lot of development work, a lot of programming. It makes sense for some of that stuff to be on a rolling release distro. A lot of it depends on what you're doing with your computer. So.
So yeah, I use Fedora because I work a lot with Red Hat's OpenShift platform, their wrapper around Kubernetes, and it's just easier to get it going on Fedora. And Fedora is more often updated than some of the other stuff available for Red Hat, so I know that I'm preparing for the future, what's coming next in RHEL. Andy, why do you use?
Well, I was a Debian stable guy for a long time. I did a lot of distro hopping, and then I sort of settled down went with basic Debian with XFCE, desktop and stable, and stuck with that. I did that through basically Sparky Linux led me to Debian, but I just I've got burned a couple times because the software the apps were a little old, not that big a deal, but I went to look for a piece of equipment that interacted with a spectrum analyzer or a logic analyzer, and it wasn't available on Debian. And so after a while, I just looked at Fedora for the heck of it and found out it kind of combines the latest software with an environment that feels very stable to me. We've had lots of kernel upgrades, no problems.
Yep.
Lots of software upgrades, no problems. It may not have been like that before. No. And I started with 28 XFCE, and moving to 29 was very easy with the script they provided. It just took care of it, no snafus whatsoever. So I'm getting the latest software. I've got stability. I like it.
As somebody that loves Debian stable, has for years, and recently, like Andy, has used Fedora a bit, even making videos and doing live streams in Fedora there for about a month. Yeah, Fedora is nice, but they're not the same. They're not the same kind of distro, right? You're kind of comparing apples to oranges. Debian stable is old and crusty. It's a different kind of animal, where Fedora is much more bleeding edge. As far as what's in the repos. Also, getting non-free stuff installed on Debian and Fedora, neither one of them ship with non-free software by default. But I find it a little easier to get this stuff up and working in Fedora than I do in Debian. Not that it's hard to get this stuff in Debian either. Just a couple of observations.
Yeah, I don't know, for some reason DNF I like a little bit more than apt, and I don't know. I haven't completely put my finger on it why I like it a little bit more, but it seems more polished and together, which I guess you'd expect from its origins in Red Hat.
I can tell you why, because when you do a DNF install, it's installed, as opposed to with get apt, you have to download the package, then you have to install the package. So I mean that's the main reason. Plus, also DNF does a lot better in resolving dependencies. Now with Synaptic, apt-get gets a little bit better with that. But I mean, the fact is that DNF will always make sure that there is the dependencies are there, and that's what that's the main thing I really like about DNF and why I stick with Fedora overall.
I should make
I've been with Fedora Core since Fedora Core 4.
Yeah, I don't use the main Fedora distro either, right? I use the community XFCE spin. I don't use GNOME. I don't use Wayland. So
I've recently switched over to Cinnamon because GNOME, my users were just GNOME was too different for them, and so that's why. Now,
I don't particularly care one way or the other as far as like command line, package management, app, DNF, Pacman. Although I do get people complain sometimes, especially about Pacman, that the commands are not intuitive at all. I mean, what does Pacman dash capital S lowercase y lowercase u mean? I mean, it updates your system, but why does that why those letters? Why did they choose that strange combination of where, in something like Debian, apt update, right? So,
whenever somebody asks me something like that, I say it's technical.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But Pacman is less typing.
Pacman would be easier to use if they adopted the modern verb, kind of command line interface.
Yes, but it's a different kind of thinking with Arch. Because Arch has that keep it simple, stupid kind of mentality, so they're thinking it's less typing, right? It's Pacman and then SYU instead of sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. You type in a lot of stuff where you just type this really short little thing. You don't know what that little short little snippet does, but you just paste it in the terminal and hope you're okay.
But to your point, after a while, it just becomes muscle memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm really concerned is that many people complain that Fedora doesn't play good with proprietary software and codecs. But I don't know. I don't know why they say like that. But they could use Aurora or some community distribution that actually comes pre-installed with those proprietary stuff. But they still point their fingers to Fedora.
I think a lot of that perception is really a Firefox issue.
Yes.
I find if I use Chrome, I don't use it a lot, but if I want to watch Netflix on my laptop, it works fine in Chrome, but not in Firefox.
I think a lot of people, especially in the past with Debian, especially when they were rebranding Firefox and Thunderbird to, what were they, Ice Dove and Ice Weasel, and people are like, what is this? What they're like? Well, it's still Firefox, but we had to rebrand it, and for legal reasons. That kind of throws people off, especially people that don't really understand why they had to do that.
Yeah, the licensing and stuff.
Yeah.
Whenever people just say that Fedora doesn't play good with the proprietary stuff, I say go install Aurora.
That technically.
Well, that reminds me of another thing I like about Fedora is the United RPM and a couple of the others.
RPM Fusion.
When I was on Debian and I wanted to try Rofi, I forget whether that was in the repos. There was something that wasn't in the repos at all, and I had download a deb and go through that trouble, which is no big deal with GDebi, but with Fedora, I could find things that people were talking about on the internet.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. In Fedora, in Fedora, you're going to get the latest Rofi. In Debian, you're going to get a package that's very old, may not even work with the config files, that you were using on another distro, because you're using a older version of Rofi maybe than you were using on, whatever distro you were coming from. That's another problem with Debian, and some of those packages are old.
Yeah.
And what about Solus Linux? Do you think Solus Linux is, it has some kind of bright future?
No, it doesn't have a bright future since the main dev left. No, I wouldn't say it's looking great.
Because I was a fan of it for a few days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting if somebody took a look at, let's say, the top 30 Linux distributions and rated them on the bus factor. Meaning if a bus hit the primary developer, would it survive or not?
Well, obviously, the big community distros, the people so things like Debian, things like Arch, they're never going away, right? Because you'd have to have a whole lot of people, hit by a bus for those things to stop. But things like Solus, things like Void, we've already seen, very small development teams. Yes, all it takes is the main dev, something to happen to him, and things kind of stop,
That's what that what concerns me, for example, with MX Linux, is, of course, I heard a Peppermint guy jokingly referring to it as a Frankenstein distro.
It is a bit.
From what you said, Peppermint's kind of a Frankenstein distro, I guess.
It is. Both of them,
when
actually.
The team is small and it's lots of pieces from different things, you figure if something happened to the developers, would you be able to continue with it? As opposed to something that's closer to the base distribution, like Sparky Linux.
I don't know enough about how many people are actually really involved in MX development to comment on that.
I don't know either, but I'm just saying it would be interesting to sort of know the size of the development teams, and if you're someone who doesn't like fixing it when there's a problem with an upgrade, like myself, you just want to stick with something that's reliable and supported by lots of people.
The only, if we throw out like the ones with corporate backing, things like Ubuntu and Fedora and SUSE are never going anywhere. The big community distros that have a ton of active developers that are never going anywhere are going to be Debian and Arch, Gentoo. And that's about it. I mean, even, we've seen recently Slackware. Slackware really has one developer. I mean, it's got more than one developer, but it's really Patrick Volkerding that runs the whole show. Without him, Slackware would probably cease to exist. And this is the oldest Linux distro. This is one of the most important Linux distros historically. And, without him, it would die. Absolutely. So.
Yeah, I used soft landing software before Slackware back when, but Slackware's been around.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Even like really popular distros here in the past few years, like Mint and Manjaro. I'm not sure how many real developers those teams have. I'm sure it's a lot smaller than what most people would think.
I'm thinking that who was it that was developing a Debian version as well as the fork that they came off of Ubuntu. Was that Mint?
Yeah, the LMDE.
Yeah. And so I mean, at least they're planning for worst case scenarios. So I think they're on the right track to help out with, to be a survivor. And if they're thinking along those lines, then they probably have something along the lines of, well, what if our core development team is knocked out or doesn't want to do it anymore? There's probably something in place to carry on. Even if it's a small development team, they probably have alternative plans, and probably didn't see that with Void and some of the other ones because they're like, hey, let's get this out and we'll see if we can get it to grow. Didn't.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here looking at the Distro Watch Top 100. Seeing what sticks out to me. I mean, without the lead dev, Arco Linux, of course, Eric Dubois. It's pretty much a one-man show without him. Arco is no more. Another one here, Arch Labs. I think it really, like 2 people are the main devs of that thing. You have really small development teams on some of these, so it wouldn't take much for some of these distros to be no more. Nitrix is another one I know has a very small dev team, really one guy. Red Core Linux, which I've reviewed on the channel many times.
Well, then you get the people who are trying to revive like BOS and stuff like that. They're even just going with something completely different. Haiku is an example.
Yeah, Zeb had something for me in the chat. It was run with the dolphin who called Peppermint a Frankenstein distro. Get it right. Yeah, I didn't call Peppermint a Frankenstein distro. I called it like a hybrid or mishmash something. But yeah, Andy's words were Frankenstein distro. But thanks, Zeb. As far as that comment, though, about MX being, quote, a Frankenstein distro, Peppermint's, kind of this Frankenstein, this hybrid distro because of the desktop environments. This, you're mixing LXDE and XFCE. I think people call MX kind of this weird hybrid Frankenstein kind of distros because you're really got 2 different communities you're kind of blending together to build this thing. You got the old Memphis community and the Antics community working on these things.
It's no comment on the quality of the distro. MX is great. It's just
no. I think Peppermint and
sustainability
MX,
here.
Yeah, both of them are fantastic distros. Yeah, both of them are fantastic. I love MX. I've got MX on my mom's laptop right now, and I don't mind Peppermint. I've installed Peppermint on some machines too, so both are fantastic distros. There definitely wasn't a negative about either one of them. It's just amazing that they get things to work the way they do, because it seems kind of like a patchwork kind of method to it, like you're just throwing a bunch of stuff on the wall and seeing kind of what fits together.
Yep. Since you brought up your mom's laptop and listening to the commentary about that install, I've got a colleague that is a Windows guy, and I need to get him on a version of Linux so he can run Docker properly. I was thinking of pointing him to Elementary, but what is the group's thoughts of that? Is MX the better way to go?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably.
I would think so. Yeah. Elementary is kind of a I hate to say locked in. It's not locked in.
It is. That's what I was going to say too.
Yeah. I'll go there.
Not really made to be customized.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Once you start to get outside, what they provide for you, it loses some of the magic.
It does, yeah. And also, I can tell you from doing elementary installs and doing MX installs on real hardware, MX, typically things just work on it, where things don't always work on elementary right away. Sometimes you have to fix some things. So, just really quickly.
When I first installed the elementary OS, I thought we could change themes and window decorations on elementary OS. The second I realized that this cannot be done so easily and so efficiently as any other normal desktop environment, I just formatted it. Whatever. I was like, whatever.
Yeah. Just really quickly, I want to respond to Chas in the chat. I've had a few people ask me this in the last couple of days. Did I get my virtual machine issues with i3 resolved? No, there's some weird bug with i3. The error I showed you guys in that video yesterday, where it would launch these VMs in this crazy small, tight little window that just crashed the VMs, I got that fixed. It'll now open them in a normal size floating window, like by 800 by 600 or whatever. But then when I go to full screen in VirtualBox with Control F to make, the virtual machine basically take over my whole monitor, it crashes. All I get is my wallpaper. I don't even see my polybar panels or anything. All I see is my wallpaper, nothing else. I actually have to open a terminal and then kill the VM, with HTOP or something. And apparently this is a known bug, this full screen issue with VirtualBox. That's kind of a big deal because I use VirtualBox all the time. I record a lot of virtual machines, and how do I record them? I make them full screen on one of my 3 monitors and capture that monitor. So now I can't do that in i3. So
sounds like it's time to stop using it.
Time to switch to.
Well, what I would probably do is those few times I need to capture a VM, and record it on video, I'll just log into a different window manager. Unless I can solve that problem.
You did commit to i3 for a month, right?
Yeah, I'm going to definitely use it for at least a month.
Yeah, so
just to get used to it.
Month,
Yeah. But if I need to record a VM full screen, I can log into one of the other 3 window managers I have installed on this machine. So,
Derek, why do you like Qtile so much?
Python was the main reason. It was just easier to. It's easier to understand that config file and hack on that thing. Then, like if you open up the config file for something like Awesome Window Manager, or definitely the Xmonad config file, it is like it's ancient Greek, right? Where Python's pretty readable. You can tell exactly what every line of that config file does. So,
well, it's not the kind of Python I'm used to. It uses a lot of object-oriented kind of class stuff.
It does.
That's not the kind. I'm more of an old Fortran procedural guy, but
here's the thing though, with those config files, you can completely rewrite that thing yourself in a more traditional kind of Python layout that you're used to. You don't have to use theirs. You could start from scratch. If you go to, they have an example directory on their GitHub, I think, where they have like a dozen different examples of Qtile configs. And if you actually read some of these configs, you can tell a lot of these guys, they started from scratch, and these configs don't look anything alike, So might want to check that out.
Yeah, I just modified the default. It wasn't that hard to do.
Yeah.
I do miss the modes in i3 a little bit because I use that for my logout menu and for an app menu, but to launch apps with hotkeys. But got around that in Qtile by using Rofi.
Yeah. But why Qtile? It was just something to try. I used it at work, so I stuck with it for a while. Use it 6 months, and I move on to a different window manager. Use that for a while. I keep coming back to these things like OpenBox. I've used OpenBox for 10 years. I'll use it for 6 months or a year, then move on to something else. Eventually come back to OpenBox, move on to something else. Eventually, I've used Qtile 3 or 4 different times now, right? I'll use it 6 years ago was when I first discovered it. I used it for a few months, left it for something else, came back to it a couple years later, and then this year came back to it for 2018 here on the channel.
I sort of discovered pseudo tiling in XFCE this last week. I attached hotkeys to their, move window right, move window left. So I can get a split screen very quickly in XFCE, which is the most I'd ever tile on a laptop, 2 windows. I can do that pretty quickly in XFCE now, and there's even a gap between the windows sometimes. Woohoo!
Well, you guys, if you've seen, my OpenBox configs, what I do with OpenBox on some of my videos, I did some tiling with that. I had key bindings to place the windows on, certain quadrants of the screen to kind of get a tiling effect in OpenBox.
Yeah, Cinnamon has that too, I noticed. I've got on my 32-bit laptop that I play with, I've got Fedora Cinnamon Spin on there, and you can break it up into several windows if you want with Cinnamon.
And the best floating window manager, though. What was that, Chris?
What are you using for a manager on Cinnamon?
Just the stock Cinnamon window manager, whatever window manager it uses on the Fedora Spin, 32-bit, and you can pseudo tile the screen in Cinnamon as well as XFCE.
I was going to say that the best floating window manager I've seen that did tiling, like really good tiling out of the box, Unity was really good, because the Compias, I don't know if you guys ever played with that, but you could, do the snap feature, one half of the screen. You could even have it grid 2x2 or 3x3, and it did this out of the box. They already had these key bindings set up. So that was a really neat feature most people didn't discover in Unity, but I played with it a lot.
So Windows has now, where you can use keyboard or mouse to pseudo tile, or what they call snap windows.
Yeah, it's really, snapping is more appropriate than tiling, because it's not like it does this automatically. You have to force the window into its spot. Where a true tiling window manager, when the program opens, it gets placed, in the proper spot on its own. You don't have to hit a key binding to,
It'd be a way if somebody was playing with, entertaining the thought of trying a tiling window manager, they could, and if they were using a desktop that's, current floating window desktop that supported pseudo tiling, they could play with it and see if it sort of suits them.
Yeah, you could.
Before committing.
And I wonder why there are spaces between windows in a tiling window manager.
There's not in most. There's, as a matter of fact, i3 gaps is the only one I know that does this by default. Every other tiling.
I've seen in your videos that there's a little like 5 to 10 pixels of gap between
in the i3
windows.
videos, because I'm using i3 gaps, and I purposely put the gaps there. Normally I don't use them. When I was running Qtile, if you look at my Qtile config or my Qtile videos, there was never any gaps. The only time there was a gap, if I was in a tiling mode and I had 4 things on a screen, I think I had the config to put a 2 pixel gap. I mean, it's a very almost non-existent gap, but it's just enough that visually it helped me distinguish between, like, if I had 4 terminals, they all don't bleed together. But
some people might find it a little more aesthetically pleasing to have a little bit of a space in between, I guess.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but it's probably not a good thing to put those gaps on, because the whole point of the tiling window manager is to get more out of your screen, more screen real estate.
Yeah.
So a couple of pixels is okay, 5 pixels maybe. You start adding 20 pixel, 50 pixel gaps like you see in some of these screenshots that people post on Reddit. That's ridiculous. You could have got much more of your app actually to show on the screen without all those gaps.
So that's so you can see your anime wallpaper in the background.
Well, yeah, a lot of people do those extreme gaps that people see on screenshots. They don't actually use that on a daily basis. I promise you they don't. They did that just for the screenshot. So don't think that. Yeah.
What
Go
about
ahead, Chris.
like on the command line? I mean, you got tiling managers like Screen and Tmux and stuff like that also.
Right.
And to tell you the truth, I love Tmux because I mean I love going through that and being able to SSH into four of my machines at the same time and have them all on the same screen there.
Yeah. And if you're using Tmux in a graphical environment, you're probably not using a tiling window manager anyway because you're already tiling in the terminal. You open up the terminal and you so a lot of people, if you're using Tmux, you're probably not using a tiling window manager, and if you're using a tiling window manager, you're probably not bothering with Tmux.
Yeah.
So yeah. Not that you can't.
I'm just saying it was out forward command line that you had options like that as well.
Yeah.
Big Daddy Linux is in the chat.
Yeah, Rocco. Still rocking the Arch Linux, huh, Rocco?
What's he doing in the chat and not on here?
Well, it's about time for us to jump off anyway.
Yeah.
I heard Ben, though. He finally got here. Ben?
Yes, I was here earlier, but you guys were in a heavy conversation, and I didn't want to interrupt.
Well, also, what happened to your camera, Ben?
Oh, it's the typical desktop webcam. It doesn't want to work. 99% of the time, it's a crappy HP camera that doesn't really work 99% of the time whenever I do video chats. So it's
well, you know, my next question, Ben, is what operating system are you running today?
Jesus, this particular tower has Windows 10 on it, which I don't know if that's the problem or what, but it's been on here for more than a month. At this point, more than a year.
Yeah.
But anyway, another thing before he jumps in. Another thing I'm working on is a Ubuntu remix at the moment. I'm still maintaining the Manjaro one, but this one and Hackman as well. But for those that don't know, for those that do, but I maintain a Manjaro, a Arch Spin, but now I'm on the third tier, making a Ubuntu one as well. So
you're doing XFCE again?
Yes, and this one is going to have the famous Devanorium original Blue Seed theme, as well as my famous Purple Dark theme as well.
Yeah, I like the purple theme, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that in there, Derek.
Yeah, good stuff.
And it's going to have the famous comp-is and everything like that. I was going to try KWin, but that would involve a heck of a lot of KDE components that I just don't want to throw in there.
If you were going to do KWin, you probably should do LXQt, maybe do a Lubuntu respin and try to...
I don't think I'm going to do that.
But no, KWin and XFCE, don't do that.
With XFCE, KWin would just not make a lot of sense unless you're doing crazy 3D wobbling and stuff like that, which this is going to have, but it's not going to be automated by default. So
all right,
leave
guys.
that up to the user.
Well, guys, we've got to move on because it's almost noon, and I've got a lot I've got to get to because I've got some stuff I've got to go do in the next couple hours, because in 2.5 hours, there is a very important football game on. I have to be here for kickoff. So
I understand that.
Don't want you late.
There's actually a football game going on right now, but I'm not interested in that one. But I've got to watch the late game today.
I see that, Derek. You never want to be late for that.
Well, you know, it's kind of a big deal around here. There'll be some parties. I'm going to get together with the family.
There'll be
We're going
some
to cook.
party, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And DT, I have a technical question, which is actually small and quick, but I don't know how to figure out that.
Go ahead.
I actually want to use my phone as a camera to make such kind of live streams that I'm doing right now, because I have a crappy webcam. And how do I do that in Linux? I have been in a research about this for a few days now, and I couldn't find any tool that helps me use my my phone's camera to connect and use as a webcam I found alternatives on Windows, but what about Linux? I mean, how can I do that?
Now I've seen
Any
tutorials
idea?
on how to do it in Windows. I've never actually tried it myself because I've always had, webcams or other cameras to use. So I've never even experimented with this. But maybe any of you guys ever tried to use your phone as a webcam? No, I haven't.
I've got it to work once. Actually, I've got it to work as just a phone screen once. I honestly don't remember how the heck I got it to work. But I know I used OBS to do it, but I don't remember how I got it to actually pick up. And that was using an iPhone, by the way. I know a lot of us prefer Android, but the funny thing is, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head how I got it to work, because I know Derek's on limited time, but I just can't remember how the hell I did it.
Yeah, actually, the thing is, I got a 4K camera on my phone, and I am still using a crappy webcam.
Yeah, I get that. Well,
the thing is, with the 4K camera, I doubt you'd be able to get 4K to connect to the computer because you'd be limited by the USB connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I don't intend to have 4K. I don't intend to have 4K on the computer, but obviously that sensor in the camera is much better than the scrappy webcam, right? So it can pick a lot of colors, it can pick a lot of detail. It might not be in 4K, but I think it can do HD.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's get a last word from everybody before we go. Andy, give us something.
Oh, well, enjoyed it as usual, Derek. I'm still enjoying Qtile. Whether I'll stay with it or not, I don't know. But
I'm not sure if I'll stay with i3, but it's fun to use something different for a little while.
It's fun to try new things and get them set up the way you like.
Yes, exactly. I've actually considered trying out this guy Meshi's awesome window manager 4 config at some point just to see how it runs. But my last word is thanks again, Derek, for the fun stream, even though I came a little late, but better late than never, as they say.
Well, it's good to hear from you, Ben. Maybe next week we'll see you.
Yeah, maybe next week, and hopefully before then I will have a link to my XFCE thing to let you take a look at.
I would love to. But Sam, give us a last word. All right. Thank you, Ben.
My last word, use Linux. That's it.
There you go.
That's a good last word. Ben, you listening?
I heard you. Right. I heard you. Well, hopefully this will be done for my extra SSD.
All right. Big Bud.
We hope for the younger generation.
Yeah. Last word, Big Bud.
Thanks for having us, DT.
All right.
It's very late.
That's it? Okay. That's the fewest words I think we've ever had from Big Bud.
There you go.
Chris, give us a last word, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having us here.
Rotary phone.
A little technology here. And I just wanted to give the last word to the chat. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Let's get this noticed.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Chris.
I hit that like button just now, actually. That was one thing I forgot about.
Yeah, it helps. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
There you go.
All right, and a last word. KLMCW. Can we look that up in the database, or?
Yeah. So thank you so much for hosting this. This has been a blast. And maybe next time I join, if you guys have questions about Docker and its why to use it, I would be happy to answer some of those questions.
Yeah, I actually am interested in Docker and knowing more about Docker.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, actually.
Yeah. That might be a fun topic.
And we'll need a last word from Dan or KC2BEZ.
Yeah. Thanks for the stream. Good conversations, and enjoyed it.
All right. Appreciate it, Dan. And of course, I need to do my last word. So I want to do a special thanks to Ansem, Carlos, Chris, Dylan, Leo, Rob, Tony, the producers of the show. Also brought to you by all those ladies and gentlemen, all those names on the screen that support the channel. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And thanks for everybody that joined me on Zoom, on camera today, and everybody hanging out in the YouTube chat. Peace, guys.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Later. Bye.